You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to thewritingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show on a Wednesday, not a Friday. We've got a special guest lined up for you, a bonus show. We're actually booked up. Someone requested a date on a Friday, and Chris, I haven't told you this yet. Mr. Stroud is coming back for part 2 of his amazing interview, which is highly demanded. But the next available Friday is the 10th of May. I think it's May. 10th of May. So we're looking at alternate dates for that, which is quite crazy. So yeah, we're pretty booked up. Season 13, episode 13 today. So yeah, we're here on a Wednesday, fitting in an extra show for you guys. I hope you're all well. How are you doing, Mr. Hoodie?
Yeah, I'm good. A few technical issues before the show, but maybe that's just because we're trying to mix things up and it only works on a Friday. But I'm glad we made the exception today and we've got a fantastic author on. And when you get great guests like this, you know, it's rude not to say, yeah, well, we'll throw in an extra one in the middle of the week. And a great reason to have a little midweek relax and chill.
Midweek beer. I'm not going to knock it. I've got one. I'm enjoying it. It's been quite a quick week in work so far, which is a good thing. But also it's been busy. So it's great to come on the show midweek. We normally get all that kind of frustration out on a Friday night doing our show, which we had a great one on Friday. If you haven't seen, please go check that out. Yeah, it's been really good. And I want to bring this to your attention because on Twitter just now, I was scrolling through before the show started. And I'm not sure if you've seen this, but Rebecca Orwin tweeted. She said she doesn't tweet often, but she tweeted this saying her middle grade fantasy debut, which is a post from, can't remember the publishing house, sorry, but it says her middle grade fantasy debut goes to Puffin for 6 figures. What do you think of that, nice. Chris?
I mean, I love the fact that we live in a world where that can happen. You know, so well done, Rebecca. You know, I'm sure you've definitely worked hard on that debut, and you know, it's great speaking to Ben last week. Aronovich. Yeah, you got it right, and I messed it up this time. But no, speaking to him about obviously writing fantasies and series and things like that. I'm a big advocate for fantasy myself. It's probably one of my go-to genres for reading. So any new material on the market for me is a breath of fresh air. So yeah, well done, Rebecca. And yeah, maybe if you want to come chat to us and spill the beans, how much 6 figures? I know how much it is, obviously, but it could be at the early stage of the 6 figures. No, I'm not talking cents now. I mean, is it 100,000 or 900,000? Because there's a big difference.
Well, of course, yeah.
Both are nice. Both are nice.
I'd be happy if someone bought my book for 2 figures. Let's be honest. But there you go. Anyway, so we'll get tonight's guests on, guys, and have a good chat. And please, if you're watching this, throw in some questions throughout, but also wait until the end if you've got any specific, really interesting questions, which is the time for you to ask them. Your comments are all welcome. Please get involved in the chat with each other. If you're watching back, listening back, thank you so much. We're very close to that YouTube milestone of getting our adverts and stuff on there. So if you can keep watching our videos for us, get those watch hours up. I think we're about 200 off, which is really cool. We wouldn't be anywhere near it without you guys. So thank you so much for doing that. But let me get the guest on before we waste too much time chatting about other things, as I like to do. So tonight's guest has journeyed through various creative realms, including acting and film development, which has led her to the forefront of both the literary and marketing worlds. As the winner of the prestigious Daily Mail First Novel competition, Lizzy's debut work, My Name is Anna, catapulted her into literary acclaim, while her subsequent novels, including Out of Her Depth, have captivated readers worldwide and earned coveted spots in the Richard and Judy Book Club. With her latest release, Nanny Wanted, Lizzy continues to define storytelling with depth, intrigue, and unpropelled talent. Join us as we delve into Lizzy's insights, experiences, and wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lizzy Barber. Hello, Lizzy.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
We're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us on a Wednesday night. I hope you are all good and things are well in Lizzy's world.
I am good, although I realise that you guys both have drinks and I forgot to have a drink. So my options, literally in front of me here, are Nesquik powder, neat Campari, warm soda, or a Jarrito, which, if you've never had it before, is a Mexican soft drink, which is basically like 90% sugar and E numbers, but I don't have anything to open it with. So if my voice gets dry, that's why.
You say that, but behind you, it's like a whole bar of alcohol or some sort.
I said your prep to make sure that I had a good background, but this is my normal background for work. This is actually where I work when I have my other hat on, my marketing hat, which is great when I'm doing Zoom meetings, but I do work in food and drink, so it's kind of appropriate.
Yeah. That's a great excuse.
Yeah, that's like it's giving me Mad Men vibes, like Don Draper. I'm just kind of expecting you just to go back and make an old fashioned halfway through the show and, knock a couple of them back.
That's quick.
Yeah. A good mix of
shout, to be fair. Yeah.
Cool. So, Lizzy, for the viewers, where in the world are you streaming from tonight?
I am in Islington in North London, where I have been in this house for coming up to 10 years in October. But I haven't moved too far in my life because I grew up in Highgate. So I'm the black sheep of the family because the rest of my family all live in Highgate still. But I live 15 minutes away. So I'm striking out.
Yeah. And as we were just talking before the show started, and we were talking about how relentlessly wet it has been in Wales. You're saying it's the same there in London. Our summer cannot come quick enough this year. It's been terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, as long as it's not a summer like it was last year, because that was pretty wet as well. So yeah. I'm hanging on. I'm going away in Easter, so I'm hanging on desperately to that.
Yeah, if you're thinking of visiting the UK anytime soon, bring a coat because it's been very, very, very soggy.
Umbrella.
Yeah, an umbrella, definitely. Okay, Lizzy, what we're going to do is we're going to play part 1 video, and then we'll look at your road to writing as we get in a bit of an insight into how you started your career and what led on to where you are now. So I'll play this video and we'll jump straight into it. So the road to writing, Lizzy, do you remember the first time that kind of writing was an inspiration in your life, and what really drove you to start doing that?
So it's one of those very kind of partly weird and partly very cliche things, in that writing had always been a part of my life, but it was never a kind of goal or a career consideration for me. So I was that kind of typical writer as a child who hoovered up every single book. My mum used to take me to the Muswell Hill bookshop, and they would almost kind of quake with fear because I'd come in and be like, read that. So I was a massive reader and used to make up stories. I remember very clearly writing stories when I was probably, as soon as I could learn to write. I remember loving it, and although through school I loved any of the kind of creative writing elements, but my first love was always acting, and that was a huge focus for me. I was the Saturday drama school kid. I was in every production in school. I was in the kind of chair of Performing Arts Society. I was very lucky. I went to Cambridge University, which has obviously a huge drama scene, and I was in 14 productions whilst I was there. Applied to drama school and got through to the last round of Guildhall, and then fluffed up my audition, and then it kind of slowly slipped away from me. I did a lot of kind of semi-professional stuff, and kind of morphed that into being interested in film development. So I worked as sort of a glorified assistant that wasn't being paid for quite a lot of the film companies in the UK, and loved that. And also, again, a lot of that involved script reports, so reading scripts and books and responding to them. And around that time, my two things kind of happened simultaneously. My boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, got a secondment opportunity to go and work in San Francisco for 6 months, and my best friend moved to New York, and they were both having these kind of huge adventures, and I felt a little bit bereft and a little bit like, kind of, what am I doing with my life, but what thing do I have? And so I had started kind of just an evening writing course. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't something like the Faber Academy. It was it's called the Original Writing Course, just in London, of a kind of Tuesday evening. And I started writing not very different, but kind of quite different from the books that I've had subsequently had published. It was a literary fiction book based on my grandma's life. She had a very exotic life, where she was born in Tel Aviv, moved to Egypt, to Cairo in the kind of height of the glamour of the 50s, and then she came to London and was then very depressed by being in post-war London the rest of her life. But I started writing that, and I just found it such a joy writing it. And then I got really frustrated with it, and had this kind of sudden, almost sit up in the middle of the night idea for a book about a girl who has no idea that she is the missing child of the biggest abduction case known to man, and started writing it, and almost kind of like to defug the writer's block that had gone on with this other book. And I told my mum about it just in passing. And a couple of weeks later, she mentioned to me that she had seen this competition in the Daily Mail. And I remember it was kind of the day before the deadline, and I had written maybe a chapter and a half, and you needed 3 chapters, and I kind of dashed off a remaining chapter and a cover letter, and actually couriered over the entry because I was so worried about missing the deadline, and then just forgot about it. And I was still writing the book. I was working full time, so I was commuting, writing it on my phone, and kind of transcribing it on my evenings and weekends onto my laptop. And then a few months later, just had this, I remember it almost kind of viscerally, this phone call from this guy called Luigi from LBA, and I was like, what are you trying to sell me? And then it turned out it was Luigi Bonomi, who is from LBA, which is the agency who now represents me, telling me that I had won this competition that I'd forgotten about completely. And I even read the fine print of what the prize actually involved. I mean, it's properly out of the blue luck, just falling on your lap. And it just catapulted me from kind of nothing into having a publication with Penguin Random House and an advance, and the lovely Luigi, who still represents me. And so I kind of went from doing this thing that was almost like a hobby, but had absolutely no intention of being published, but no kind of actual dreams of being published, to this sourcing into this career that just feels so fitting now, and that I love so much, even though it's very hard and challenging at times.
It's amazing, an amazing story and journey. But how did you feel like, did you have at any point feel like maybe the drama is what you wanted to do, or the screenwriting started appearing and maybe that's the direction? Did you feel like you almost fell into this kind of career path, but you found out that was right for you at that point, or were you ever
So I think in both of those, so it was development rather than actually screenwriting, which is something that screenwriting itself is something I'd be really interested in being involved in at some point in my life. But I feel like in both of those careers, they'd either kind of petered out or reached a natural end. With film development, it was in the really shit kind of post recession, when nobody was moving up in the industry, and so there was just I could not get my foot in the door of an actual paying job, to the point at which I then started working with my brother in the restaurant business. He needed somebody to do marketing for him. I'd done a bit of work experience with him in the past and took over. And then I got a call from the assistant, I'm not going to say where, but the assistant of one of the film companies I've been working at, to say he was going on holiday and his intern was covering, but they didn't trust the intern. So could I please come back and they would pay me expenses?
Wow.
And I was like, take holiday from my paid job to cover you, and you pay my expenses. And that was the state at the time. And I had an amazing CV and I worked for some amazing companies. There just was not anything around. And similarly with the drama, I did a lot of stuff and I tried very hard. I actually, you get interviewed by Richard and Judy when you get a Richard and Judy pick for the podcast. And I was telling this story and Richard was like, well, were you not very good? I was like, thanks. but I think I have no idea. It's quite subjective. I have no idea if I was very good. I obviously wasn't good enough, but I think that I also just got tired of the driving. And I think that I got to the stage where I didn't really want to be a working actress. I didn't like the instability of it. I mean, that's part of the reason why I work part-time now rather than writing full-time. And so both of them petered out, and this didn't yet.
Yeah, love it.
So, Lizzy, I'm really intrigued. Take us back to that moment where you went to the Tuesday night writers sessions. Can you remember the first time that you submitted a piece of work for the group to read, and what that sort of felt like? And then from that, can you tell us what your writing routine looked like in the early days, and if it's changed any now?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it was nerve-wracking, and it was that typical thing of a very small group of people, and they were all hugely talented. Kate Weinberg was in my group, who wrote a gorgeous book called The Truant that came out a few years ago, that was kind of dark academia, and a couple of other journalists or ex-journalists, and people who had published before and were coming back. So they were very, they weren't completely green people. I loved being pushed, and I had two really amazing writing coaches on this course. One of them was Nanny Wanted, who wrote Mrs. Hemingway. She actually just won the Sunday Times short story competition. And Howard Cunnell, who wrote an amazing memoir. So I think that was his name. God, my brain is just completely gone. Myself,
Just say it with confidence. It was.
So I loved being pushed by them, and I remember one piece where I'd written something like "It smelled of mothballs," and they'd said, what do mothballs smell like? And they were really kind of pushing me to get that kind of full sensory thing, and I just kind of lapped it all up. But then, I mean, my writing has changed because my life has also changed very dramatically since then. So when I was writing, and when I started writing My Name is Anna, like I said, I was working full time. I was also not a parent. So in a weird way, I kind of had less time during the day, but I also had a lot more time on my for myself. Like my free time was my either of you are parents.
Yeah. No free
so,
time.
So it was evenings and weekends, the glorious days of Saturday, being able to. And my husband was actually doing a lot of food writing at the time, so the two of us would have time that we could write. And then my son was actually born 10 days after My Name is Anna was published, so I was pregnant kind of after the must have been kind of after the edits and in the lead up, and then I was kind of on mat leave. And I've now subsequently gone back to work full part-time. So now I'm in a world where the book lives in my head sort of Saturday through to Wednesday. And then I'm chomping at the bit, and then I have Thursday and Friday where I write. And those are my dedicated writing days. So it's great because now I have 2 full days to dedicate to writing. But it does mean that my life is very compartmentalized. I'm very big on my my iPhone diary. I can't live without diarising everything. It does mean that even work, I switch off at Wednesday at 5:30. I put my out of office on. Obviously, if stuff that urgent comes up, then I put it. I will fit it in. But then I do have to fit my writing into those dedicated days.
I quite like that idea, because a lot of people will get to that stage where they're writing every day and they're going through the motions as opposed to really wanting to jump at the bit, like you said, or chomping at the bit. So maybe restricting yourself a little bit and going over that story in your mind gives you more of a chance to develop that before you hit the page again as well.
Yeah, and I also think, there's that whole thing about task expanding to fit the time that you have. So I think I've always worked under pressure and liked working under pressure. And that's why when I was at university, I was always in rehearsals or doing a play. And so a lot of my friends would sit around in the university bar all day and then cram stuff in at night, but I couldn't do that. So I'm very at focusing when I need to focus. And I think that if I wrote full time, I suspect that I would kind of have a lot of time that I would procrastinate in and waste. Whereas I know that I only have these 2 days.
Yeah.
I also in those 2 days as well.
How long do you think? Sorry, Chris.
Sorry, Chris. I was just going to say, what does a good 2 days look like? Like, because Ben was on the show last week and he was saying he writes every day. Some days he might only write 150 words. A really good day would be about 750 words. And I found that really interesting because you expect somebody who brings a book out every single year, it's about 100,000 words. You think they must write a lot every day, you know, to go through the editing process. And I think a lot of our listeners appreciate just knowing the sort of details of what a productive day is like for 2 days worth of writing and what a bad day would look like as well.
Well, so I can tell you that, so I've just started writing book 5, very early stages. Last week I wrote 2,500 words and I thought I was a fucking rock star. But I think that it really depends on how you write. And one of the things that I speak to, I have a kind of a very close group of writers that we have a little WhatsApp group that we talk probably every single day about, is that everyone's process is so different. And I'm sure that you guys, your process is different from each other, is different from me. And I personally, I have learned I cannot do the shitty first draft thing. I cannot bang out a load of words and then skew it all. So when I write 2,500 words, they're quite considered words that are almost kind of not line edited to perfection, but I think about them carefully and write them. And I'd rather write that. And the way that I write is that I will write like that and write linearly until I reach a point where I'm stuck. And then I go back. I call it my loop-de-loop method. And then I go back in it and edit that, and I find that going back and editing kind of puts me back into the story and helps me carry on. But I, you know, a bad writing day is probably a day where a load of other stuff has come up or that I have just totally wasted. So I do get, you know, I want to be able to fit in, whether that's seeing author friends or non-author friends, or I might have just kind of, you know, life admin that I need to put in those days. But I think if I've had the time to myself and I've totally wasted it and I haven't done anything productive, that's a really bad writing day for me. It's not necessarily about the but yeah, I write slowly and carefully and then up with a draft at the end. So I probably take the same amount of time to get to that draft that I'm happy to submit as an author who goes through loads and loads of drafts, but I just don't like wasting words.
What I was going to ask was, how long typically does it take for you to create a draft or maybe even a novel based on the fact you're writing 2 days a week instead of someone perhaps who's writing 5 or 6 days a week?
It's really, I mean, you guys probably know as well, every book is different. The book 4 that I have finished was a real ball ache. I'm glad that you said that swearing is okay, by the way. I said that. It was a I mean, I've had a load of stuff going on personally, and it was a real ball ache, and it was 18 months to get it to a stage where I sent it to my agent. But I'd worked with a freelance editor and I'd gone through kind of knotty bits with him in the past. But in terms of a draft that I've said, okay, this is a draft that I'm submitting to you, it took 18 months. That was too long personally, because I can see the trees at the end of it. I'd kind of fallen out of love with it. I've also got no sense of if it's any good or not. Whereas Nanny Wanted is the only book that I've had that was written as the second part of a 2-book deal, and so was under contract of a year. So I think that probably took me about 8 months. Again, because I was under time pressure. So I think I would probably say to get to a first draft, which for me is a very polished, good state first draft, is probably 8 months to a year. But I'm not a book a year person, I don't think. I think I need a little bit more time to gestate.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm not sure if I was writing just 2 days a week, how much I'd get done. I think I'd be a lot slower than that. But then someone who said you're used to or you like the pressure, does say that 12-month deadline, does that make it more difficult for you? Or if you were getting close to that deadline, would you actually pick up the amount of days you write, or do you stick to that quite religiously?
I mean, I don't have a choice of not, because I'm kind of contracted to be in 3 days a week. But I think it would be picking up the pace. It would be, finding times in the evenings or on the weekends to get it done. And then I do, with Nanny Wanted, I remember I was thinking in my head, I was kind of dividing it up. So I knew that if I wanted to get to 80,000 words, I'd have to write 10,000 words a month. So which actually then, that doesn't actually come down. That is about 2,500. My maths is really bad. It's about 2,500. So it does net out if you're writing like I do, and you only are writing 80,000 words, rather than people who kind of tear through 80,000 words of a first draft and then rip it up and start again.
Yeah. I'm going to jump back slightly to the point where you won. Oh my goodness, the first novel, the Daily Mail. Yeah, the Daily Mail first novel competition, which I'm assuming was a big surprise to you. As you mentioned, you had the phone call unexpectedly. Did you then feel, writing after that, you had like an expectation to hit a certain level of quality?
I had so less than a fucking clue about what entailed or what was expected of me, of what I was supposed to do. I didn't even know, and it sounds really stupid and naive, but I didn't really even know. Obviously, I was a big reader, but I didn't really think about genre. I didn't think that I was writing a thriller. I was just writing a book that I was interested in. And so suddenly it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm a thriller writer, so I can't submit this book set in 1950s Cairo to you because you don't want to publish that. And it was a bit of a shock, thinking and not understanding that you are a genre writer and that you write within these certain parameters. Obviously, people move around and change, but that was the expectation of me. So I'm generally quite hard on myself with quality anyway, and I think that that's part of the reason that I think that I need a bit more than a book a year, or the kind of a self-publishing model, or a digital first novel where you have to churn stuff out, because I do like to kind of meditate on things. Not saying that that's a reflection on quality, not of digital first authors, but I don't have the output to be able to do that and feel that I would be able to quality that I want to be able to produce. So, I mean, I don't think that My Name is Anna is my best book. I think that all writers get better as they progress. It's a book that I'm very proud of. But I think that it was always about bettering myself and learning. And I learned a lot. I'm not one of those people who doesn't read reviews and doesn't look at NetGalley and doesn't look at Goodreads. I read everything. And obviously I get both pissed off and upset with bad reviews, but I also take that as a chance to learn what did and didn't work.
Yeah. Do you ever use the reviews as a way to kind of guide your work, or do you just kind of take that in and go, okay, that's what they said, let's move on?
I mean, I think that it's made me learn a lot about myself as an author. So one of the things that people who don't like my books come back to is that I'm not an action-packed shock turn horror at every page author. All of my books are quite slow burn. And that, rather than being a negative, I think that's just about finding my audience and making sure that people are aware, and with the kind of package and the branding that I'm that sort of. Nanny Wanted is very much a kind of gothic menace. Out of Her Depth is probably the most fast-paced of them, and actually the book that is now on submission is my most kind of action-packed, twisty-turny. So I think that I learned that. I also think I learned, it's interesting thing about endings. I think I've also learned that people hated the ending of My Name is Anna because it kind of built up to a point and then closed the door. And that was very deliberate for me, because I wanted the readers. But it's made me think a lot more about not necessarily pleasing the reader, because I think you can fall into a really dangerous trap with that. But it's made me think about what I do with the endings a lot more.
Yeah.
Have you from what you, sorry, Chris, I was going to say, from what you're saying there, Lizzy, it sounds like you're still in the experimental phase in terms of you trying out different things and different endings and different different sort of twists and different levels of the genre. do you think you've found your voice yet with the book? And I mean that in a way of like, this is me in my entirety, and like, this is where I'm comfortable, and this is what I want to produce, you know, because you talked about, you know, venturing into different genres and things like that. Have you set your sights on I want to take this path, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is like what you as an author, you know, your kind of brain want versus what the industry wants, or where you're being placed. I think it's interesting. I was having a conversation with I'm sure that you guys know Laura North because she is so prolific, talking dark women's fiction rather than thrillers. And I think one of the things that I've learned, and I'm really trying to kind of channel and certainly to push my agent into considering, is that I think that thriller is a really catch-all term. And I think that you know, me next to a crime thriller or a cozy crime or those sorts of kind of broad-faced thriller or even psychological thriller are going to find the wrong audience. Whereas I think that I've learned that my books are dark women's fiction rather than thriller, and that is where I feel most comfortable. And I think that gives me the opportunity to slow the pace down a lot more and be more about the psychological underpinnings of a book. And that's where I feel most comfortable, and that's where I feel the most joy in writing. I was saying to my same little writers group the other day that I'd written an introductory passage which completely gone off on the backstory of why the kids in my story were hanging around on the street in the afternoon after school, and it was all about them becoming latchkey kids because their mum had started working. And I was kind of looking, oh God, you know, a thriller reader's going to be like, yeah, but what? Get to the point. Like, where's the body?
Yeah.
But I think it's really disheartening to kind of cut that out for the sake of pace and plot, because that for me is the kind of nugget of the people and who they are and how they're acting like that. So I think in that sense, yes, but that I'm still experimenting. And I think I've also learned that I'm not one of those people who can write the same book every time, or like the same type of book. A locked room author or a destination author, which I think would make my life easier if I was, because then you can be like, oh yes, Lizzy Barber, the destination thriller writer, with a new destination thriller set here this time. But I can't do it. I think I get bored.
Do you think you get any external pressure from publishers to try and put you into that box, in terms of, look, we know locked room thrillers are great and they sell in abundance, you know, without outrightly saying, can you give us one of those? Do you ever feel that they are trying to put little pressures on you in terms of pushing you into a different direction?
I'm not sure I've been given the opportunity yet to have that kind of conversation about what my brand is or my career is. I mean, I moved from Penguin to Pan Macmillan, and Pan Macmillan took Out of Her Depth and Nanny Wanted. So that was the only time I had an editor for 2 books. And I think with Nanny Wanted, I kind of said to him when I finished Out of Her Depth, you know, what do you want from me? And he said that he liked the kind of glamour of Out of Her Depth, and that, you know, kind of same vibe but different. Setting's very important to me, but obviously I couldn't do Italy all over again, so I chose Cornwall. And I had the idea for the book, and then I approached him with that idea, and he liked it, and I ran with it. So I don't know where. I mean, I'd love to have a conversation with a publisher about where they would see me and how they would shape me. I'm not sure that I could write a brief. You know, I'm not sure that if somebody said, Lizzy, write us a book about school mums, that I would be able to do that, because I don't know if it's the acting thing, but I get very immersed in an idea, like super into it. I was saying to somebody the other day, I like at the stage I'm at with the moment, also because I'm a pantser, the stage I'm at with this book that I'm writing now, I have this weird sensation. It's almost like I'm reading a book myself, in that I'm kind of like, it sounds really wanky, but it's like I'm kind of for the book, and it's like talking to me, and that is great, but I have to be like that, and that's where I get the joy from it, rather than I think I with book 4, that I've just finished, and I think that kind of made it feel very, I don't know, like work. And I do work already, so I don't want it to feel like.
Do you think that's the actor in you, in terms of, like you said, about having the background and the reason why characters do things, and that makes them them? I think when a lot of people are have experienced acting, the first thing that you kind of do is put yourself into the character's shoes, and like, I've done it myself when you're rehearsing to be a character. Like, you can kind of live the life of that character, or think, what would they say in this situation? Oh, I'm going to try that out, and things like that. Do you think that's the acting side has influenced your writing, and that's why you need the detail in order to really get into a story?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, I'm not like a method actor. I'm not. My book at the moment is set in like 90s Pennsylvania. I'm not like walking around with an American accent talking about the 90s. Although, funny enough, I did with this book and the previous book start making my own soundtracks that are kind of mood soundtracks. But yeah, I definitely, I mean, all of my books have female characters, main characters, and female voice, and I think I would find it, they're not all kind of carbon copies of me, but I think I would find it very difficult to write in a male voice. And I definitely do kind of see from their worldview a lot when I'm writing, and think about, like you said, would they say that? How would they say that? And I do definitely get into a kind of zone of thinking like them.
Okay. Before we move on to the next part of the show, Lizzy, what one tip could you give a writer, kind of at any level, I guess, that you've learned along the way of your writing career?
Well, I think, to go back to the how you write, I would say don't get swayed by what you think you should be doing, because every writer has their own way of doing things. Just because you've seen that this international best-selling author uses Save the Cat does not mean you have to use Save the Cat. You've got to do it in a way that flows naturally for you.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. Makes a lot of sense. I definitely haven't read that, and I completely understand when you're talking about Panston and being in that story. That's exactly how I kind of understand that and do that. I kind of see it like a film, like I'm watching a film, and I just do it that way. Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fun.
It's lucky for us for us pantsers that don't have to go and put all this stuff on a big storyboard. I kind of like that. Okay, so we're going to go on to part 2, which is What's the Story, Lizzy, and hopefully you can reel off Nanny Wanted's blurb.
Oh God.
This is where we catch everyone out, because they always on to the next project and forget what they've just written.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll do what we can. So part 2 coming right up. So then, Lizzy, Nanny Wanted, what's that all about?
I didn't even have time to grab a copy.
You can go and get one if you want.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So Nanny Wanted is the story of Lily, who is a young woman who leaves behind a toxic relationship in London, and she decides to move as far away as she can without leaving the country. So she finds a job to be a nanny in Cornwall for the Rowe family, who are a couple called Lily and Charles Rowe. They live in a mansion on the cliffs of Cornwall that's been around since the Doomsday Books, and they've got 2 very lovely children, and she thinks that this is where she's finally going to kind of leave the past behind. But as she kind of moves into her job and the days start to flow, she becomes embroiled in their relationship and discovers that it's not the past she should be running from.
Ooh. Well rehearsed.
Thank you.
I love a moody Cornwall kind of story, and it's got such a great kind of vibe to it when you put it in a kind of a darker sky in the moody, stormy weather. Is that kind of what the attraction was for you, and why specifically did you go down in the Cornish route?
So it definitely was attraction. I mean, again, this was kind of subliminal for me, but it was very much influenced by Daphne du Maurier, but not, like I said, not consciously. But we had spent, I actually did a play in Cornwall. I did a play in an outdoor theatre near Loo, which was a 1920s musical called The Boyfriend. And that was Cornwall. I'm not particularly well travelled in the UK, but I completely fell in love with Cornwall. And then, like so many other people who the Cornish probably hate, I was part of the cohort of Londoners who kind of up sticks in the lockdown summers and spent 2 really lovely summers in Cornwall and kind of fell in love with it all over again. And actually, subsequently, we've ended up going every year since, and we've just booked to go again in May half term. And my son must have been 2.5, and we'd rented a car and we were driving through these kind of really myopic country lanes where they're kind of claustrophobic, you can't see anything either side, and I just had the idea for this book kind of fall into my head. I've never been kind of lucky enough to have that whole plot set on me since. And then, like I said about this kind of really quite wanky way that I'm really immersed in the book, I was suddenly super immersed in this story and was kind of seeing it in front of me the whole time we were in Cornwall. And I was kind of videoing stuff and taking notes about the flora and fauna. I love location and kind of, and I spent a lot of time like researching what flowers would be around when. And so I think it just grew from there, really. And I loved a lot of I did an English degree, and a lot of the bits that I focused on was on Gothic and Victorian Gothic in particular. And so I think I loved going back into that world of kind of creaky floorboards and not sure whether the doors opened or not, but in a modern setting.
Yeah.
So do you think becoming a parent has changed the types of things that you write about?
Well, I did write a story about a child who was abducted from a theme park ride before I had a child. I'm not sure I would do. I think, funny enough, I mean, the book, it's called Be Mine, but obviously that's a book I have in my head. I have no expectation. So Be Mine, which is my 4th book, is has a lot about new motherhood in it. And I think that I don't think that I would have done that justice without having been a mother myself. And that's certainly something that I wanted to tackle. So I think in that sense, yes, and it's given me a kind of understanding of writing a parental figure. But actually, that's the first character I've written who has children. So I think, yeah, steering away from writing about abducted children probably in the future, or children coming to harm. I got a lot of trigger warning. My name is Anne. There's also kind of infanticide in it. So yeah, I'm not sure I would do that again. But I think it's I mean, any life experience is going to give you an understanding or bring different colours to what you write.
This might be a very difficult question, but with Nanny Wanted, right on the cover, you talk about keeping secrets is a must. And obviously, when you've got characters that are playing each other, that sounds wrong. Having secrets, but just say it that way. How do you kind of keep the reader in the know about that without giving it away, if that makes sense?
I mean, again, as a pantser, I'm kind of surprising myself at times with what's going on. I think it's something that you learn. I mean, I think that, again, you're talking about what you do with each book and the kind of tricks that you learn as you write each subsequent book. And I've certainly learned about how to piece out information, how to give out stuff and when to hold it back. I mean, I know some plotters, again, not me, who have a kind of spreadsheets where they have like what the reader knows and what the author knows and what's on the page, you know, this kind of very detailed charts of what you should be reading. But I think that mine is probably more organic than that and is kind of a learning experience. That's not very helpful, is it?
It's not, but it does give a good insight into how one writes a story and someone else writes a story, because that must be very, very, to get to the point where you've got that spreadsheet and you're telling yourself who knows what, the reader, the writer. I think that's incredibly structured and must take an extraordinary extra amount of time compared to us plotters who get pantsers who get the joy of just going through the story as it is.
Yeah,
difficult.
Nanny Wanted, without revealing too much, has a big secret that Lily is keeping throughout the duration of the book, and I think that just kind of had to sit with me in every scene. But actually, the fullness of that twist didn't come until a subsequent draft, where I was like, there must be a reason that she is not just I'm out of here, I'm leaving. And so it knew that there was something there, but then it did just sit in the back. And it's the same with, again, my books aren't kind of shocking twists laying on top of the other. I think maybe I can keep a hold of them in my head, but for me, it's about sitting with them and just having them in the back of your mind as you're writing.
So,
Lizzy, sorry, Chris. I was going to say, do you want to ask your question? Because I feel like I've interrupted you a lot.
No, that's fine. Go on, I'll ask it. I was just going to say that you mentioned earlier about your reviews, that you read them, as we all kind of do. Most of us do, especially the bad ones. When it comes to Nanny Wanted, have you kind of read the reviews, and what's the feedback been like? And has it been kind of what you expected?
It has, in that, the things that I take the most joy in are when people appreciate my writing style, because that's really important to me. So funny enough, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I was looking over my Amazon reviews earlier today for Nanny Wanted, and the review, I think that it's been really pleasant that people have enjoyed the writing and the setting, B, seen the kind of intentional or not, but the Rebecca parallels. And I think that people who have known it's a slow burn have liked it being a slow burn. But then obviously the people who want a fast-paced thriller have then given that a 1-star review because they think that it's boring, or stick around with it. So yes, I do read all of my reviews, and it has been useful to see, and again to learn about myself. But what I think is interesting on like a purely kind of hard data point of view is that Out of Her Depth is my best-selling book, probably because of Richard and Judy, and that has 3.9 stars on Amazon, and Nanny Wanted has 4 and was by far my worst selling book. It reached a much smaller audience, is probably what somebody would say to spin it. But I just think it's interesting, because with a book like Out of Her Depth that obviously had a lot more prominence, you're going to hit a lot more people who are picking it up because it's in their face, rather than because they've actually chosen it because they've gone out and selected that book because they like the sound of it, or they know me as an author. So I think it's very telling for me. That Nanny Wanted is for me I think it's a much better book, and I think it's my 3rd book. I've learned a lot more. It was, apart from the ending, which was horrific, it was quite a pleasure to write. I wrote it quite quickly, whereas Out of Depth went through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
I think my question was that I heard somewhere that a twist doesn't just happen, because if they do, they don't have the same shock factor with a reader. It has to be like subtly hinted at, like throughout. So it's a shock, but it's not like a complete and utter left wing shock that just doesn't make any sense, because that just irritates people. So my question is, how do you do that? How you talked about your books being slow burners. When do you decide to strike the match from a writer point of view?
So I think with Nanny Wanted, it's very different. The twist is very different from something like My Name is Anna, because I would say that My Name is Anna is a why done it, not a who done it. So a lot of people, again, because it came out not that long after Girl, and the rise of the psychological thriller and the twist being a thing. So My Name is Anna is 2-person. It's this girl, 18-year-old, living in America, called Anna, who slowly discovers through the course of the novel that she's not who she thinks she is. And then it is a girl called Rosie, who is 16, living in London, who is the sister of the biggest missing person case that's ever happened. So, I mean, spoiler alert, they're sisters. And that is literally, that's there on the blurb. It's not so much, but it's very obvious, and it was never meant to be a twist. But the amount of people who are like, yeah, I saw the twist coming from the blurb, was never the book. It was all about why she got taken, who took her, and their eventual kind of reunion together, and Rosie's journey to find Anna. Whereas with Nanny Wanted, it's one of those books where it kind of, I think I always picture books as kind of having different waves, different patterns to them, and Nanny Wanted is definitely a crescendo, and it kind of all hinges on this kind of last scene where all of these stories come out, and because it is about keeping secrets, and everybody is keeping secrets, and everybody has different agendas, those then kind of had to crescendo at the end where everybody is kind of almost one-upping themselves and revealing different things about each other. So I think it's just, I mean, I sound like a complete wanker when you play this back. I think that there's like a musicality to books, and I think they all have, I'm like literally going bright red as I'm saying this. Books have different musicality to them, and I think that Nanny Wanted needed that peak to come at the end. And again, Out of Her Depth was different as well, and that had a reveal and then a kind of slow fall to the other side of it. And my fourth book has a mid-book twist. So I think it's just about hearing the music of the book and finding where the pacing works for it.
Yeah, I don't find that a weird analogy at all. Like, I completely understand that, and I don't think that's a weird thing to say, because a lot of people will resonate with that. So yeah, where's your waves? I don't know. Chris, have you got anything else before we go on to our staple questions?
Oh, I did, but you just throw me.
It'll
come back to me. Yeah, it'll come back to me. Too busy doing the waves.
Yeah. Okay. Part 3 of the show, guys. If you have questions for Lizzy, even if you've got them for all of us or us, whatever, send your questions in now. We'll get on with our staple questions, and if we've got any coming in from you guys, we'll read them at the end. So part 3 coming right up. So take us away, Mr. Hooley, with some staple questions, please.
Well, I've remembered the question I was going to ask, so I'm going to ask that first, because obviously you've talked about writing multiple books now, and one thing that fascinates me from an author point of view is when you look back on a book, does the reason why you wrote the book change with time and hindsight? So obviously when you're in it and you're in the moment and you're writing the book, you may think, oh, I'm writing about this, and you keep going about it and this idea. And then when you get a little bit of time away from it and you've had that time to think about it, a lot of authors that we've interviewed and that I've heard on other podcasts and stuff, they talk about the sort of like aha moment where they go, oh, I was actually writing about that. And it scares them a little bit because they don't know. And like some people have said on this show, like, I was actually grieving at the time, and I thought I was writing this book, but I was actually writing about my mum dying, or I thought I was writing about this, but I was actually writing about my relationship and things like that. So I just wondered if you'd had a similar experience with the books that you've produced and published.
You know what? I don't know if it comes back to this acting thing and having a character, but I don't really feel personally hugely connected from like my personal life to what I'm writing. I think that I have to write about things that interest me. So Nanny Wanted, I really wanted to write something that was set in a post-Me Too era. Written in a pre-Me Too era, but set in a pre-Me Too era, but written in a post-Me Too era. So looking back at what a woman who would have been my age at the time, so kind of 10 years ago, what the life would be like then, and choices she made would have been like then. But I think that comes out in the stages of writing, and that kind of solidifies. I don't think that I don't think I'm channeling my personal self through my writing. I think I'm channeling through it. So Out of Her Depth, I wanted to write about kind of toxic female friendship and kind of Ripley-esque characters. I've got to write things that are fun and interesting to me, but are not necessarily personal.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. If you had the ability to step into any fictional world created by any author or a film or TV show, what world are you going to choose and why?
I would absolutely love to be in any of the Gatsby novels. I just think it was just so debauched and fun. But obviously, like, stepping in gives me the ability to step out. But I think I would choose probably I would choose to be a hanger-on at a Gatsby party.
Excellent.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of scope there that they could have other characters, set in the Gatsby world that could be explored.
I'd be
that'd be really fun.
Barber who's gone to East Egg or West Egg, I don't remember which one, and just happened to have a party. There we go.
Nice. Lizzy, you mentioned Ripley, and obviously wanting to write Ripley-esque characters. Now, we had this discussion in the after show last week about Saltburn, and when I watched that, I said, it's just a modern retelling of The Talented Mr. Ripley. And everyone who's watched it since was like, oh yeah, I get that. And it made me appreciate Ripley a little bit more. Well, my question is twofold. Why do you think that is happening in society in terms of like maybe a retelling? And what story would you like to put a modern twist on?
So Out of Her Depth is a modern day retelling of Ripley. Emma Fennell ripped me off. No, it's. I mean, I think that definitely fascinated me. I think that, I think that stories about voyeurs are always fascinating, and I think that, if you look at the popularity of something like Succession or White Lotus, I think that's what I enjoyed about writing Out of Her Depth, was writing rich people behaving badly. It's just super fun. I mean, it's because we see, again, and that goes through kind of seeing through the eyes of the character, is that we're the reader is with the character, so we can see people behaving horribly, but we can allow them to behave horribly, because we're seeing it from a distance and through the point of view of a voyeur. So I think definitely that. And again, I think that there were shades of shades of Rebecca in Nanny Wanted. I think I'd love to write something. I'd love to take a kind of a period book and reset it, something, maybe Little Women, and reset that for a modern day audience, something about female friendship. But yeah, I think I do tend to kind of somehow get inspiration from other books without realizing what I'm doing. Wuthering Heights is one of my absolute favorite books of all time, and I'd love to see what you could do with that world in a modern setting.
What makes that one of your favorite books? Like, I love the topic of favorite books with authors, because obviously everyone's unique and everyone's got their own sort of like top three or whatever. Why is that such a potent book for you? I think
it's one of. I studied it for A-level English, and I think that it was one of those, in a really nerdy way, one of those books that really, really made me appreciate craft and writing. And it's so intense. I love, you can like feel the moor around you, and you can feel Kathy and Heathcliff. But I think that it's fully immersive. I actually went to see Emma Rice is one of my favorite directors. She had a company called Knee High, which is actually a Cornish company, and she did a production of Wuthering Heights that was kind of transformational theatre, so it's quite kind of weird and wacky. Like, my mum is totally not into this kind of thing at all, and she was like, well, how did they do the woods? And I was like, they were made of chair. And she was like, oh god. But seeing it on stage, you realize just how visceral it is and how clever it is. And you have the Lintons, again, are these kind of fussy, prissy, rich characters that she was poking fun at, and actually it feels like it transcends the fact that it was written in the 1840s. It feels very modern when you're not kind of having to look at it as a serious book or as a kind of part of it, a genre, of the time. It's just a really great, totally immersive, and I think that those are the books that stand the test of time for a reason, because they still kind of, I think that's why Shakespeare is still done and appreciated, because there's something that resonates no matter what era you're in.
Absolutely. Okay, if you could take any character from the world of fiction and use that character to put into any of your novels, what character from the world of fiction are you taking and why?
So we've kind of touched on this already, but I would love to take Ripley and into Diana, who is my main character in Out of Her Depth, who is, I mean, she's bless her, everybody hates her, like readers hate but she is kind of like trying to be Ripley, but she's very good. She's not as slick as him, you know. She doesn't get it half the time, and I would love to see them together with him just holding her hands and like teaching her the tricks of the trade, kind of like double act.
Nice.
Yeah, we do have another sort of like staple question that is a bit morbid. I'm interested to see where this goes, to be honest, because you said about the lack of personal connection with the books in terms of like, you know, you have a sort of idea in mind and that's what you go with, and it's not necessarily a piece of yourself. But you're looking back on your writing career, on your deathbed. What would you be happy with? What is success to you?
Well, I think that I'm like, I kind of don't shy away from the fact that I'm very ambitious. So I think I would like to hit, you know, milestones that every author dreams of. You know, I think it's getting, to be totally truthful, it's getting harder and harder to hit any kind of chart, but I would love to have charted. I'd love to be a Sunday Times bestseller. But I think more, like I said before, I think it's more people loving my writing and saying that like people saying they loved my book and they loved the writing would be really important to me. Whilst also, yeah, you know, the film deals, book
So Lizzy,
clubs.
let's say somebody's there and they go, right, you can either, this is the option, you can either have instant success where you're going to make hundreds of millions from your books, or you can be appreciated after death, and a bit like Edgar Allan Poe type. People are going to study your work, they're going to pull it apart, they're going to enjoy your work, embrace your work in lecture halls up and down the country and around the world. But it's one or the other. What are you taking?
Would the immediate success also come with people like me having to compromise? You know, would I have to write like to the industry restrictions of the time? So like, would it have to be you know, romantasy is huge, so write a romantasy about two horses?
No, I think it's going to be whatever you write, it's going to be a smash hit. It's going to be a home run, and people are going to love it, and you're going to make a lot of money from it. But it's only going to be as long as the sort of this generation remembers. When they die out, other people are not going to pick it up.
Yeah, fuck it, I'll take
the option.
Yeah, me too.
Be around. I'm not going to be around.
Yeah.
With that much money, you could just put statues of yourself everywhere. I mean, come on, Chris.
Yeah. No, I'm just putting it out there because, you know, for a lot of writers, it's either one or the other, isn't it? Really, like I honestly don't think there's many authors that are multi-millionaires that will be remembered forever. Just like I think there's some authors that were not appreciated in their time, but have gone on to be appreciated and will continue to be appreciated because of what they did. So.
Yeah, I don't need to be appreciated after I die. I'd like to be appreciated now and have the money, please.
Yeah. I agree. Great answer. Right, we've gone over the time slightly. So what we do, we've got a question from Anna, who was a fantastic support of this show, made this wonderful scarf. Chris drinking out the wonderful mug she sent him. Anna's got a question. That question is, do you have a favorite element of world building that makes a book better for you?
So like I said before, I think I need a kind of multi-sensory effect. So I spent a really long time researching what trees there were in Pennsylvania, in a suburban town, and I think that really makes stuff come alive for me. So I think it's it's sensory for me.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for the question. I've got a question I just remembered. At the start of the show, you were talking about your kind of education in terms of writing and what mothballs smell like.
Yeah.
What do they smell like?
Not like. I think powdery, musty, slightly sweet.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know overkill. Don't overkill is your description.
Chris, what do you think they smell like?
To be honest, I don't think I've ever actually seen a mothball. Like,
No, I've not.
To be able to be like, that is a thing that I need to think about. Like, I can get why it might happen in a story, and you know, you've got a certain setting or a place where you think, oh, mothball over there. But I've never really thought about it, to be honest, and I don't think I'm going to start now.
Well, what I'd like to do is, if people listen to this on the podcast or they watch this back, leave us a comment in the description or tweet us or whatever with if your description of the mothball is different to Lizzy's. Just let us know. Just tweet us and let us know what you think a mothball smells like.
Yeah, let's make it into a competition as well, Chris. We'll buy a copy of Nanny Wanted. I'll buy it for the best description of the best sensory description of a mothball and what it smells like.
Okey-dokey.
So, yeah, if you want a copy of it, yeah.
What do you say, Lizzy? Sorry, I missed that.
Sign it.
Oh, a signed copy for mothballs.
Nice.
The most random competition we've done. Woohoo!
Yeah,
brilliant. Chris, anything else before we wrap this up?
I mean, we had a beer mat for me and Rankin, so a signed copy of Nanny Wanted from Lizzy Barber will definitely be one up on a beer mat. So yeah, get your sensory skills out for what a mothball smells. I mean, it's sensory. You're going with taste. Like, I'd love somebody to go to the next step. Smell it. What does it sound like? Taste it.
I need to get this. Did you know that you have this weird thing in your brain whereby you are able to tell what any object would feel like if you licked it? Like, look around the room wherever you're in now.
What?
And pick any object and imagine licking it, and you'll be able to imagine what licking it would feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at objects, yeah, and I can do that.
Weird.
Yeah.
That's a mind-blowing moment right there. I'm just gonna.
Is that everyone or just men? Because I feel like men are more inclined to licking things because, like,
yeah,
that sounded really bad, but I just mean, like, I've seen, you know, whenever I've seen somebody lick a window, it's been a man.
But you'd be able to tell what it would feel like.
Yeah, that has just shocked me. Right, on that note, we've got to wrap this up because we are nearly 10 minutes over the show's end, which appreciate Lizzy's time, and she's got an evening to get on with and enjoy. Lizzy, all I can say for me is thank you so much for coming and chat to me. I got to speak to you and interview you at Harrogate last year. It was wonderful. Will you be back attending next year or this year? Sorry.
Yes, I will be. I'm not going to have a book out this year, so I'm not going to be doing any events, but I will 100% be there staking my claim in the tent.
Yes, well, we will come and find you and chat to you. So you can definitely jump on a camera with us and chat some randomness. Maybe we'll get some trivia, Chris, this year.
Yeah, one final question for the audience who are interested. And when I say audience who are interested, I mean me. Are you taller than an agate?
Am I taller than a maggot?
The maggot. What does a maggot look like?
I mean, are you taller than Chris Agate?
I don't. I mean, I'm really short, so I think most people are taller than me. I'm pretty sure you're taller than me.
I am. Thank you, Chris. Lizzy is quite Lizzy little.
Love it. No. Because everyone on the show that was like watching the show, we had a poll before we went to Harrogate. Who was going to be taller, me or Agate? And everyone voted that Agate would be taller. And he obviously he wasn't. But then I was looking at you two tonight and I thought, actually, is Lizzy taller than Agate? So I just thought I'd throw that out there just for fun.
At best.
There you go. Thank you for tuning in, guys. And Lizzy, again, like I said, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your story with us. It's wonderful. We will do our best to support you and Nanny Wanted. If you want to buy this book, pick it up now. You can do. In the description of the show, you will see a link. Please go and pick that up. And where can they buy it from, Lizzy, if not from our description link?
Good old Amazon. Hopefully all good bookshops. I think if you pester Waterstones, they can probably get a copy in for you. And yeah, I think you can probably request it at any bookshop.
Excellent.
Or library. Do that as well. Libraries are great tools. Yeah, they're fantastic. Get a book from a library. That's a good way of doing it as well. Just say, I need you to order 10 of these books because we're running a book club. And that's a great way of doing it.
Makes the PLR statements really do, probably better than most royalty statements.
Yeah. I'm sure you can get income from ALCS with food books in the library, you know. That's something worth us looking at and distributing knowledge on. Anyway, that's a tangent. Pick it up from wherever you can get it from and support local bookstores as always. And we are back Friday. Can you remember who our guest is Friday, Chris? I can't right now.
I have no prior knowledge to who the guests are. It's a surprise to me every single time, but that's the way I like it because let's find out lots of interesting stuff.
Yeah, of course. We've always got a good guest on for you. So it's Simon McCleave. Great. Guys, again, thank you so much. We've got to go because we're just chatting absolute rubbish right now. It's wonderful to see you all. Please be safe and see you on Friday. Have a great rest of the week. Lizzy, enjoy the rest of your evening. And from us, it's goodbye. Bye-bye, everybody.